Welcome to the One Player Podcast, the show on solitaire board games. I'm your host Albert, and this is episode 345.
You spin me round like a record, round.
Oh yeah, the classic 80s songs. I love it. Thank you, Julius. That makes me feel young again.
That was the closest I could come to that one, but hopefully I was hearkening back to the good old days for you old people.
Yeah, yep. And back to the old days too, because it's been ages since I played a rondel game. So
Oh, you're missing out, Albert. This is a good mechanic.
it is actually. I played one recently, but generally I haven't played too many, and that's what we're talking about today, isn't it?
It is. So we are going to be discussing rondel games. So a rondel game is essentially you have a circle and you are moving around that circle by whatever fashion it is that the game allows you. But you stop along the way and you do stuff as you're moving around and you get to do things as you're happening. And we have all sorts of different types of rondels that we're going to be talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of my favorites, a couple lesser favorites of mine. I don't think I have any that are completely unknown to our stalwart listeners of this podcast, but we shall see for today.
All right, and welcome back, Julius, from your hiatus.
That is true. Thank you very much, Albert. I saw that you managed to cover a couple things in my absence while I was off away having Shavuos holiday, and I was up visiting my wife's parents up in Baltimore, or excuse me, up in Minnesota. So we've had travels and a lot of fun, but it's good to be back.
Nice. Well, all right. Shall we begin then with our rondel games? What is a rondel game? You covered it pretty well, I think. I think you get to do better at this. So I'm gonna go first. I'm just gonna take off here, and
Rip
really
off
just
the
start with
Band-Aid.
the best choice I have, which is Red Cathedral. This is a game I covered last year, right? It is a game about building a cathedral in Russia, and it features a rondel on the board, which you move around the different seasons in a circle. The board is randomized, so exactly what's available in each space is different from game to game, and not just the items, but also like the bonus actions you could take.
Mm-hmm.
And you're basically moving around that board trying to gain resources that you use to build your cathedral. It is a one. I think it's 1 to 4 players, and in the solo game, you're playing against the bot that also moves on the board. I like it. It's a fun game. Excuse me. I haven't played it recently, but if I recall correctly, it did seem a little bit swingy. Where some games are a real easy victory and some were just really hard, and it had to do with the randomness of the setup. But it's an interesting game, and it's a nice, simple, basic rondel mechanic in there, and
Nice.
beautiful components too. By the way.
I like the components for it. I think that the central rondel looks very nice. The components look very
Mm-hmm.
nice. The dice are nice. I remember the only thing I didn't like about it were the people cards. Those
Okay, the art of it.
the art of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I just want I recall this one. I didn't like those people arts and I still don't
that's
like
it
those
too.
people arts.
I like it. It's kind of I don't know. It's different than other games, and I like that about it. I guess I don't know. Yeah, it's something that you either like or dislike. I think
Yeah.
because
But I
it's
know that
different.
this is also one of the ones that has a geek up bit set. So yeah, those always
Oh,
pique my
does it?
interest because I like blinking my stuff.
I have not seen that. I should look at that. So should I? I
And
don't know.
apparently
Maybe
you
not.
do too. You shouldn't if you want to save your wallet. Because it already
Well,
comes with pretty
yeah,
nice components for quite a number of things.
it does. Yes, and this game has an expansion, which I think I used a little bit of it, but not a whole lot. So there's a lot of ways to keep getting more and more plays out of it. Again, the one issue I did have with it is it seemed like the randomness of the setup could make the game very easy or very hard, and and that is a little unfortunate. And I guess you could just mitigate that because specifically when you shuffle the cards for the AI, and depending on the order they come out, uh, he may lose a whole round of being able to build, which will give you a lot of time to get ahead in points. And I guess you could just say, if it comes out this way, I won't do it. Or if it comes out the very opposite way, where it's much harder, I won't do that and I'll reshuffle again. Or maybe after each
Mm-hmm.
set of rounds, reshuffle it. When it's set up at the beginning, it stays that way. So there probably are ways to fix that. But again, yeah, that's Red Cathedral.
So I'm going to list actually one of the games that I really enjoy in my collection is a Rondel game. It is Transmissions. Transmissions is an adorable game where you and everyone else, if you're playing multiplayer, control a set of 4 robots that are trying to spin around this forbidden wasteland and just interact with it and have the fun of messing around in the forests and with lost toys and build up some electric charges, things like that. So you have a rondel that is surrounded by, I think it's 10 spaces around the board, and each of those different spaces comes in a set of pairs, and they all interact with sort of different things on the board. As you're spinning around, you'll have a deck of cards that controls which of the 4 robots you can spin around at once. So you may have the cards that only let you spin 2 or 3 of the robots, but the robots that are in the spots you want are either in the way or you can't reach it with the robots you have. So you may be restricted on where it is that you can move around with rondel. You'll move around the rondel. You'll grab these, they're essentially cubes, so, which is a type of resource, or you'll be able to grab electricity, and you'll trade those in for point opportunities. So you can get sets of different toys, you can get pipes, you can get some bonus points off of some forest cards, you can get some ideas that give you bonus actions. And so that's all just the different types of spaces on the giant circle, I suppose the moon-shaped circle, but the rotating track that you're going on, and you keep running around it. When you're playing solo or when you're playing multiplayer, because the 4 robots that are moving around the board are controlled by everyone, you may set things up where you'll be able to like chain through and have a robot do something else, and then another robot come in, play some bonus actions. But the other players may go mess up your plans by moving all the robots out of the way. If they see, for example, that you're desperate for energy, you can't buy stuff without energy, will deprive you of the energy spaces, keep the robots away from there, or just a random, you may not end up with it. Or just a random, they may want their plan done and they may mess up yours. So the fact that normally with many rondel games, everyone has their own thing that they're moving around the rondel, in this one, that's not true. Everyone is sharing these 4 different robots that are moving around the rondel, and everyone has a limited number of control over it and can mess with other plans almost by accident. And that sort of planning makes it stay very tactical and very enjoyable to be able to pull off a plan when the plan comes together. So that is Transmissions. That is my first option, or my first listing for the Rondel games, and one that I actually think is a pretty good game and definitely adorable. Pretty
Mm-hmm.
components, nice stuff. I know they're coming out with the second edition that I'm waiting for to
Oh,
see how
really?
that updates some of it. Yeah, they've updated some of the ways of scoring pipes. Hopefully, that's going to make it a little bit easier. I'm still waiting for that stuff to come in. But that is Transmissions.
Okay. That yeah, that's a neat game. I remember you telling us about it before, and it sounded really neat. And I love the box and the little robots and whatnot. Um, for my third game, I'm kind of gonna go fishing here, and we'll see if I catch anything because I think you're gonna make me throw this one back. The it's a rondel game, but only if you're playing solo and only for your opponents, the AI. And I actually got two different games that would fit this category. And I'm gonna go with the one I've played most recently, which is Coldwater Crown. It's a fishing game. Um, you there's a board, and each turn you could choose where on the board you go to pick your action. When the AI goes, you draw a bait from the bag, and based on the bait he has, it determines where on the board he moves next in a clockwise direction. He basically moves to the next space that matches that token. So you kind of have an idea where he might end up every time from a limited number of options. And you could manage where he ends up going. Like you could block spaces for him because he won't stop wherever you're at. Each player had 2 workers, if I remember correctly. So there's the rondel there. It is a lot of fun. You end up taking your actions when you're playing solo, knowing where he might go and trying to control it, manipulate that a little bit to maximize your points and your fishing and all that. That is my first attempt of that. If I wasn't picking that one, I would have gone fishing and instead picked New Bedford, the whale fishing game. So no matter what, fishing games are really popular when it comes to AI rondels. I don't
I
know
mean,
why, but it seems to be a thing, you know?
you can also pick, I mean, there's another one that does something similar, Anachrony, in the solo board for Anachrony also has dice that are running around the two rondels to be
Okay.
able to determine what it is that they're doing. It's the same idea, but those are just the AI controlling it. You're not
Mm-hmm.
influencing on the rondel. You're not moving around on the rondel, right?
You're not moving on it, but you do have some control over what the AI does. You're limiting his actions by where you go. Because of that rondel, when you're playing with a rondel, your some of the game is like choosing where to go, knowing the impact it has on the other players, right? And yes, I'm limited to these three choices. I could go to the nearby one or the far away one or the one in the middle, which is the easiest for me to do, has the least cost, the most benefit, but also which one interferes with my opponent. So there's all those things to consider. So there is still some of that here. Where I go, I'm allowed to go
Mm,
anywhere, but the AI can only go in a circle on the rondel.
I mean, it is a rondel.
It has multiple rondels, multiple bots to play with, and they each work a little bit different. But it's the same idea. As they move around on the rondel, they're limited to what actions they could take on it. So yeah, it's a rondel, but yeah, it's not something you use directly. Interestingly, there's another game that I said I remember playing this rondel game, and I'll just mention this as an aside: is Aura at Labora, an old game from like 2010 or so by Uwe Rosenberg. And I remember having a rondel, but it is not a rondel for taking actions. It's a rondel for managing resources. So it's not considered a rondel game, but it has a rondel. They call it a rondel. It's a thing that goes around in a circle, changing each
Yeah,
round in a
it
circular
counts as a
pattern.
rondel. I wasn't going to pick it, but that counts as a rondel.
Okay. Well, if that counts as a rondel, I would see why this one doesn't, because in neither of these games are you actually moving on it.
What you're talking about in Orlib, or you're talking about the resource wheel?
Yes.
You're moving your pieces around on it. You can
Are
control when
you?
it is that you cash out. You can control
Oh,
when it is
okay.
that you
I
build
have
up.
not played that game in good 10 or 12 years. I don't remember it. I
Oh,
thought you did move on it. Okay. Then never mind. Well, then it should be updated in BGG because it's not considered a rondel game for whatever reason.
well, I know we've disagreed on how it is that they use rondels, but between us, I think that's possible because it's more of a resource management tool. But it you do
And
kind of move
also
on.
because it's so old. I think rondel was still kind of a new concept in gaming at the time.
That can be. I know there's one game that I'm surprised you haven't listed, and I'm not going to take it in case you pick it later, because I have other ones that I prefer to pick. I'm going to move on to my second, which is New York Zoo. New York Zoo is another Rondell game where you are trying to. This is an Uwe Rosenberg game where you are trying to use polyominoes to be able to build out your zoo. You'll have a set of polyominoes around a central wheel, a central circle, and you have an elephant moving around that board. That elephant will keep running through it, and when it passes the space, you essentially get to move the elephant between. I think it's 1 to 3 spaces each time, 1 to 4 spaces each time, depending on player count, and then solo. You have other restrictions on which you can move, but essentially you'll keep moving that elephant around the board. And if it stops on a space with animals, you get to pick some animals, put them in your zoo. If it stops on a space with an enclosure tile, one of those polyominoes, you'll put it on your board. And multiplayer, you're racing against the other players to be able to um, be the first one to finish off your whole zoo, and solely you're racing against the timer of the game to be able to finish off your zoo. And it's a race to see who can finish off their zoo first. The tiles, the polyomino tiles, I mean, the components are relatively plain in my opinion. The tiles are tiles, they're just green spaces. The boards are thin mats. There's nice meeples for everything. I actually put stickers on each of my individual meeples because I felt that really made the game pop a lot more when all of the meeples had meeple stickers on it.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that really made the game a lot more table friendly, a lot better of a table presence. Um, but the gameplay is really good. The decisions about how many spaces it is that you want to move, which things it is that you want to push and get, because you may end up wanting a particular piece, but another player or the solo randomness just grabs that off from under you, and now you have to work with what you got. Or sometimes you're stuck having to pick between two bad polyominoes, but it's either that or take nothing on your turn. So you have to take what you get and fit it into your puzzle, however it is. Then you can work your puzzle out to be able to grab what you can get. sometimes you just are left having to fill, because if you fill in a whole enclosure, you're able to get some bonus tiles to be able to fill out your puzzle. So sometimes you're just left spinning your cycle trying to run and grab animals as fast as you can to be able to grab some of those bonus tiles and just finish off the last slot or two. Not an ideal way to finish off the game, but if that's what you have to do to be able to finish, then that's what it is that you have to do. So again, it's got that central rondel that all of the players are moving around. This time it's just got one meeple that is controlled by everyone, the elephant, and a very
Hmm.
limited amount of spaces between how far they all go. Spaces actually, shuffle up as the game finishes up. There may not be filled spaces anymore. But you're running around that rondel over and over again, grabbing animals, grabbing tiles, and finishing off your zoo. That is New York Zoo.
Yeah, I think I like that kind of rondel game a little more. The one where there's just one figure that everybody shares and moves versus everybody having their own piece and
Mm-hmm.
blocking each other. I kind of like the idea of I think Julius wants to go to this space next, so instead of going one, I'm going to go three and just mess him up, kind of thing.
I'm not familiar with one where you block people. I don't have one of those in my list
Well,
today.
I'm pretty sure there's some rondel games where when you're on a space, nobody else could go there.
Could be.
Um, Red, I think Red Cathedral has that. Maybe I don't remember now. Uh, if nobody has it, that seems like a great idea for mechanic, because then block folks and stop them from going places.
Could be.
Just more options, more things to think about. Um, speaking of more things to think about, boy, like I said, I have not played many Rondell games, and I'm really struggling for another one.
Hey, Albert, have you played Patchwork?
I have played Patchwork. That's a Rondell game.
I mean, it's got a big track, although granted, it's not on a board. It's just made up of a bunch of polyominoes,
I
but you're
only played
going
it
around
once.
it over and over again. It's got that solo deck that's designed just for solo.
I don't have the solo deck.
Oh, you don't?
No, because I only just got that game late last year, and the solo deck. I'd have to print it out, but I haven't. I'm assuming it's available to print out. I don't know.
Oh,
So I
I
don't
think it
have
is.
it, and I've never played it solo. But it does have a rondel. There's another game by Uwe Rosenberg, Indian Summer, that has a similar thing where you lay all the tiles out in a big circle, and then you set a piece in the right space, and then you can start moving that piece forward to choose which piece you take. Oh, and he's got three games in that series, and what's the other one? Cottage Garden.
Yes,
Have you played that one? Has a rondel in a way, also, right? You put
it does.
the piece on the board, and each turn you could move it as far as you want, if I remember right, or maybe it's a limited number of spaces, and then you could grab one piece from that row or column where you just place that that marker, and so you're going around once exactly. So it's not exactly a rondel. I mean, it is because it's going around the board, but once you reach the end, you're done. So I don't know that I would call that a rondel, but it's that similar going around feeling too. Okay, yeah. See, I don't know rondel games. I haven't played too many. I have two that I kickstarted one years ago, and it's on my list to play someday. That I haven't yet. Dreams of Tomorrow. I didn't even know it was a rondel game. I was looking at the list on BGG yesterday. I was like, oh, I've got that. And the sequel, Dreams of Yesterday. Oh, I've got that too.
That's not ones I'm familiar with.
No, the little games. Dreams of Yesterday. Who designed this one? Heather O'Neill of Weird Draft Games. I don't know. That one came out I think this year or last year.
And you haven't had a chance to play it yet?
Not yet. I've opened them. That's as far as I've gotten. Someday I'll play them. They're on my list of games to eventually get to and cover in the podcast.
Well, do you want to count it for today? Dreams of Yesterday?
Dreams of Yesterday and Dreams of Tomorrow, the sequel. Both of them have a rondel. I did look at it
So we are
briefly.
we are
The
counting
Dreams,
Dreams of Yesterday and Dreams of Tomorrow for today.
yeah, for today, because there are no dreams of today. Dreams of tomorrow, you go around the board. It looks like the board is fixed. Dreams of yesterday, you're drawing cards and placing them to create the rondel that you travel on. So as the game progresses, the cards are changing, and
Well,
it seems a little more dynamic.
very cool.
Seems interesting. Well,
I
that's all
look
I
forward
know
to
about
hearing
it.
more about that from you in the future.
Someday.
Well, my last Rondell game is Merchants of the Dark Road. Merchants of the Dark Road is
Hmm.
another highly produced game where you are a merchant spinning around a central rondel, which is your town. And in that rondel, you're going to be collecting queen's orders, so orders that you have to live with the queen. You have to collect merchandise, so staves and armor and swords and potions, and adventurers who also often both bring and want certain items that you have to go and pick up. So you're buying and selling things. There's a second side to the board with these far off lands that you have to go travel off to by having a whole group shared event to be able to go run out there and go do that, where everyone goes in this caravan together. Um, so it's very much an economic game, but it's an economic game where everyone has their own meeple version of their wagon that they're running around the rondel, having to select which areas it is that they want to go to. Your ability to move around the rondel is limited because you'll always have three of these custom dice with either 1, 2, 3, or 0 pips stored on the die to be able to figure out how far it is that you're moving on your turn. So you'll have to select one of those dice based on what you prepped. Sometimes, best laid plans, you may not end up with a die that does particularly what it is that you want. So you work with what it is that you have to be able to move around, make certain purchases, sell certain things, pick up orders, go off and do far away caravan merchanteering, things like that. The game is very nice on the table, has some excellent components, especially if you have the deluxe version of it. I personally, it's actually left my collection. I thought
Hmm.
that the game had some particularly complicated rules. I felt that I felt you needed a mini rule book to figure out how it is that you do the caravan, where everyone goes and lines up and they all go together, and you have to go buy and sell far away. That
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of extra complication. An important part of the game was always difficult to explain whenever I was playing with other people, and just kind of detracted from me a little bit from the fun. Playing it solo for a game that you already know it's got a single solo meeple that also runs around the board, also is going to be making sales and purchases at random, just grabbing some of the extra stuff, sort of playing a randomized second player AI to be able to grab stuff and be able to compete against. So I thought it was enjoyable solo. I thought it had a little bit too much rules complexity for me in multiplayer, but the game was pretty fun. Was an absolute table hog. Took up a ton of space with that central board. It's huge. It's a gigantic board, but the production values were really good. A really nice looking game, enjoyable to play once you get the hang of it, but a little bit too difficult for me to be able to keep explaining and keep going over that. And so it has left the collection at this point in time for me. But a fun rondel game.
Yeah, yeah, I seem to remember what when you talked about it before. You said you would tell the other folks when you're teaching to a group, we're gonna ignore the traveling mechanic. When we get to it, we'll step through it together slowly, and I'll explain the rules as we go along.
Yeah,
I remember you really struggled with that part of the game.
yeah. And I still did. I continue to struggle with that. It takes up a good third of maybe even half of the gigantic board in the middle. It did not need to take that up. It really could have just been left off as a small set of things to be less of a
Mhm.
gigantic table hog, but whatever. But it's this huge thing, and the steps for it, the method of doing it, it was printed in the rule book, but it's like an 18-step process to be able to go through and do this little shared adventure. And often when I was playing it with anybody who hadn't played for the first time, I would rush to go do it as soon as possible so that everyone could experience it, because understanding it from just the rules was just too difficult.
Wow, yeah, that's no good. Hey, let me ask you, Julius. So for rondel games, does it have to be a circle?
Well, I will
Like
point out
what?
transmissions is not actually a circle.
Okay, so
It's a
they're just in a line, and then when you reach the end, you go back to the beginning, sort of thing, or something.
yeah.
Okay, I bet you there are more games that I haven't thought of that are rondels in that fashion, or that have a rondel, but I've
That
never
it's just a
considered a rondel
rondel in a
because it's not a
line.
circle. Yeah,
I
I
couldn't
bet.
think of one.
I didn't. I wasn't trying to think of any, but I bet you there are a few out there.
I look forward to hearing what it is that you come up with.
the Red Cathedral, for example, does have that for the AI. The AI has its own straight rondel, I guess. But
Well, I'm still not sure you can really consider the AI. Like, I'm not going to push you on it too much, but let's not
okay.
start throwing it in there. Like, hey, we found some. Like,
Yeah, no, okay, no. Okay, how about does the action have to the movement have to be in a single direction? Is it still rondel if you're going? You could choose which direction you go.
I mean, it would have to be it. It can count as a rondel if you're able to go both directions. It would sort of be, hey, it's a twist on a classic rondel mechanic. Classic rondel is you keep going around a circle in one direction. So you can twist a
Mm-hmm.
rondel, but you have to understand that you're twisting on it.
Okay. The reason I ask is I thought of one game that said, that's sort of kind of around on this is a stretch, I know, but in Pandemic, The Cure, you're going around in a circle, right? You generally speaking can travel in one direction or in either direction, but you only go one space at a time.
That's not true. You
Normally,
can fly to anywhere.
you can fly if you have a special die, right? But normally the
That's not a
normal
special
movement
dive.
is
That's
one
as
space.
common. Flying
Ah,
is as common as moving adjacent, if not more common.
I tried. I tried.
No.
Okay, yeah, you've played that game way too much. I knew it.
Yeah, you're not sneaking that one by me. That's one of my top games.
It was worth a try.
No,
All right.
no
Should we
chance.
sail out of here then?
I think I've spun you around circles long enough at this point in time, Albert.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night, all.
Hey, listeners, a quick aside here. It occurs to me that I didn't mention the contest at all in this episode. So, the way and when it ends, so the way the recordings work, episode 344, the second episode on the Bunshai games, just came out this morning as I'm editing this episode. We recorded this on Tuesday. So I need to give it a few more days for people to enter. The next episode, 346, will be recorded next week, Tuesday. No, I'm sorry. It'll be recorded this Tuesday. The following Tuesday, we'll record 347. At that point, I think we will go ahead and resolve the contest. And that'll be aired the Saturday, a week and a half later. So to give you an idea, that's the 27th of July. So it's going to take a little while to get this announced. Sorry about that, but that's the way it is. Yeah. Good luck.
Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at julius@oneplayerpodcast.com or JLBird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at albert@oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractalute on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan Elduce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.